And Zombie Reddit, today's story is...
My fiancée cheated on me days before our wedding, so I pretended everything was normal and left her standing at the altar in front of all her guests. I'm 31, and I was engaged to Jelly, 30, after 4 years of dating. Today I should be celebrating my marriage, but instead I'm far from home, completely ignoring her, and seeking solace by writing to strangers. Last week, my friends organized a stag do for me. Nothing extravagant, just a quiet weekend in the countryside as a last celebration before I got married. The day we were leaving, I felt a strange uneasiness, like a premonition, but I couldn't explain it. Jelly had decided not to have a hen party and instead planned to work that weekend to make up for the time off she would take for the wedding. I felt guilty about leaving her alone just before our big day. I told her I'd rather stay with her, but she convinced me that it would be unfair to my friends who had organized everything. At the time, her argument seemed reasonable. Now I understand why she wanted me to leave. The trip turned out to be a nice one. It wasn't a wild party or anything like that. My friends had rented a cabin by a lake, filled the fridge with beer, and stocked the living room with enough snacks for a whole month. My friends eat as if there were 10 of them. As I'm the first one in the group to get married, they were all excited for me. We spent the first night drinking around a campfire, sharing stories and joking. It was exactly what a stag do should be. However, I couldn't shake that nagging feeling of guilt. She was at home alone working while I was enjoying myself with my friends. The next morning, I don't know if it was the hangover or my intuition, but that feeling became unbearable. Without telling anyone, I slipped away and drove back home. I wanted to arrive early and prepare a special dinner. It would be a pleasant surprise, and I thought we could enjoy a quiet evening together before the hustle and bustle of the final preparations. On arrival, I saw an unfamiliar car parked in front of our house. Jelly's car was in the garage, as if she had never left for work. She was supposed to be working from home that afternoon. I could sit there, imagining explanations, or just call her and ask. She replied in a cheerful voice, "Hi, love, how's it going?" I felt a lump in my throat when I asked, "Well, where are you?" Without hesitation, she replied, "At work, why do you ask?" "Nothing. I just wanted to know how your day is going," I replied. "Fine, but with a lot of work to do before our day's off," she said. Before I could reply, she hurriedly said goodbye, saying she was busy with something important, and started sending me affectionate messages. Lots of, "I love you," and "I miss you." I stayed in the car, paralyzed. I didn't go in through the front door. I simply couldn't. Something inside me, perhaps my instinct, warned me not to. Instead, I circled the house until I reached the back garden, where a bedroom window was. The curtains were closed, but the sounds coming from there were unmistakable. It was her, whispering and laughing, accompanied by a man's voice. I took out my phone and started recording, thinking that I might need this evidence later on. Standing there, laughing, I heard her say, "I still can't believe I'm doing this here. It's great. I want another round." The man laughed and muttered something I couldn't hear. After a few minutes of silence, I heard their sighs intensify until I couldn't bear it anymore. Hearing those words devastated me. I wanted to burst into the room and confront them directly, but I stood motionless, as if my body were paralyzed. Instead, I walked silently back to my car. I could have gone inside and ended it all there and then, but I didn't feel the need to confront her. What was the point? I already knew the truth. I just wanted to disappear and never see her again. Going in and confronting them would only have caused me more problems, possibly legal ones, while they would continue with their business in my absence. I drove back with my friends. I didn't say a word. I just drank until I lost consciousness, anything to numb the stabbing pain in my chest. My friends tried to cheer me up by taking me to the pool, but I could only wallow in my misery and keep drinking. The hours passed in a blur until my best friend, Scene, pulled me aside to ask me what was wrong. They knew I had gone out in the morning, but they thought I had gone to explore the nearby village. I told him everything. He was furious, as angry as I was, as good friends do. It was comforting to have someone react the same way I did. We talked for hours. I confessed that I didn't want to let this pass without her facing the consequences. He proposed some ideas for responding to the situation. And the best thing? I chose one. I was clear that I didn't want to see her face or confront her directly. All I wanted was a forceful response. After leaving the resort, Sign drove me back. I stayed at his house and sent Jelly a message saying I would return the next day. She replied casually, "Okay, tomorrow I'll go to my parents' house and stay there until the wedding. See you before I leave. I hesitated before replying, no, let's save the emotion for the big day. She accepted, without question, without suspicion. That night, Sign came by my house and saw that the same car was still there. She was continuing with her deception. Shamelessly, remorselessly. She was still with her lover even that night. The following afternoon, I returned home. She was at work or who knows where. The room looked so clean that no one would suspect what had happened there the day before. At least they had the consideration to clean. But even if they had used gallons of disinfectant, I felt so disgusted that I didn't even want to look at the bed. I slept on the sofa for the remaining days until the wedding. I played my part perfectly. Sweet messages, enthusiasm for the wedding. On the outside, everything was fine, but on the inside, I was already completely emotionally disconnected. On the morning of the wedding, she arrived at the venue with her entire entourage, bridesmaids, makeup artists, family, posting photos and videos on social networks. I told her that I would go to pick up my grandmother from the airport and that I would be a little late. I kept in touch with her until the last moment, continuing with my performance. But instead of putting on my suit, I packed my belongings, locked up the house, and drove to my grandmother's home in another state. I turned off my phone, and for the first time in days, I breathed easy. Before disappearing completely, I sent an email to my guests, my family, my close friends, and my colleagues. I told them everything about the infidelity, the lies, and how I found out. I informed them that the wedding was canceled and that they should not bother to call me or contact Jelly about it. I excluded our mutual friends to avoid anyone warning him in case they decided to act as intermediaries. My parents also called me, worried. I briefly explained the situation to them, but without revealing my full plan. Only my grandmother was in on it. I called her the night before, asking her not to travel for the wedding. Sign said he would attend the ceremony to observe what was happening and keep me informed. He knows I'm with my grandmother. He called me recently, but I don't think I'm ready to hear the details yet. I feel numb, confused. I don't want to talk to anyone. I have a lot to express, but I can't write anymore. I'll update soon. Update 1. I finally spoke to Sign. She told me everything in great detail. The wedding day was complete chaos. Everything seemed to be going according to plan until the guests started asking about me and my family. She tried calling me repeatedly. When I didn't answer, she called my parents, to no avail. She called Sign, who was present, and pretended not to know anything. Her parents began to bombard her with questions. Where is the groom? Is this some kind of joke? Did something happen? Her bridesmaids tried to keep their composure, forcing smiles, but the tension in the air was palpable. The guests formed small groups, speculating and whispering all kinds of theories. One of them, invented by his godmother, suggested that he had run off with a work colleague. Eventually, her father took the stage and tried to calm the situation. We are experiencing a small delay. Please be patient. His voice was trembling, and he was pale because the ceremony was turning into a disaster and there were no answers. His words did not help. The guests were not naive. They knew something was very wrong. Jelly and her friends soon noticed that none of my guests had attended, which seemed like a premeditated plan. They tried to pressure Sign for information, but he kept it secret and acted surprised. Finally, her parents and friends discreetly escorted her from the venue, and one of her bridesmaids announced that the wedding was postponed and that everyone would be notified of the new date. But that wasn't the worst of it. She was not only facing the emotional disaster of having been humiliated in front of her family, friends, and all the guests. No, this affected her where it hurt the most, her financial situation. Jelly had lost a good job a few months before the wedding. After a long search, she got a low-paying job that paid her by the project. She was barely earning enough to cover her basic expenses. I paid for most of our shared expenses. At the time, I didn't care. We had already planned everything, and as I had the resources, I offered to cover the wedding expenses without hesitation. I believed that we were a team, and that in a marriage it didn't matter who paid as long as we were together. That belief vanished the day I discovered his infidelity. When our relationship ended, I wasn't going to allow my money to finance a celebration built on lies. For the wedding, we had hired an organizer in charge of everything: the venue, the decorations, the food. We had only paid 40% in advance. The remaining 60% was pending. In fact, the 40% was due 2 days before the wedding, but I conveniently postponed it. When the event manager contacted me, I told her we would settle everything after the ceremony. She informed me that additional interest of approximately 30% would be applied for the delay. I replied that it was okay, that we would pay what was necessary, and told her to charge what she considered fair. It wasn't my problem. I knew it would go away, and that she would have to deal with it. And that's exactly how I planned it. When Jelly tried to discreetly leave the room to escape the gaze of the guests, she was stopped by the organizing team. The manager wasn't going to let her go without settling the payment. The debt was 60% of the total cost, plus interest, and believe me, it was a considerable amount. A devastating blow for someone without a stable job who had spent all her savings on the wedding dress, makeup, bridesmaids' outfits, and other details. The manager insisted that it be paid for immediately. She didn't have enough money to cover it at that moment. Her father had to intervene, but even for him, the amount was too high to pay all at once. In desperation, he asked for more time, explaining that this had taken everyone by surprise. The wedding had been canceled, and he didn't know where I was, the one who should have paid. But the manager was not willing to accept excuses. He told him he didn't care what had happened or who was going to pay, but someone had to do it or leave some guarantee. After much pleading, he allowed Jelly and her mother to leave, but forced her father to stay until a new contract was drawn up. He made him sign it, assuming full responsibility for the payment. If the debt was not settled within the agreed period, they would take legal action. My father replied firmly, "There is no one to blame here but your daughter. She destroyed everything, not my son. She chose disloyalty over commitment. Instead of coming to give us lessons, you should educate your daughter to be faithful to her partner." The man left, because there was nothing more to discuss at that moment. I don't know exactly what happened between them afterwards, but some mutual friends ended up contacting me to express how sorry they were for what had happened. Through them, I learned that her own parents had also withdrawn their support. She had to move out of the house because she couldn't afford the rent. Initially, her parents had planned to take her in until she could get her life back on track, but when they found out about her infidelity, they withdrew their offer. Her father, because of the whole debt issue, was furious and demanded that she pay back every last cent that she had borrowed. Not only was she completely alone and facing the consequences of her actions, but she was also facing financial ruin. She is currently sleeping on a friend's sofa. It doesn't affect me at all. I have temporarily moved in with Sign while I find my own place. I found out many of these things from messages she sent me herself, but I didn't reply to any of them and I blocked her. I can't say if she sent any more because they no longer reach my phone. Update 2. More than 4 months have passed since the canceled wedding. She has been looking for me to get some closure, according to our mutual contacts. She tried everything. She called me from different numbers, she tried to contact me through friends, and she even turned up at my parents' house. Nothing worked. I didn't respond because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. I blocked her completely. I eliminated her from my life as if she had never existed. But she was persistent. Her last attempt came in the form of an email. The subject line read, "One last meeting to close this. Please, please, please." I was about to delete it without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. It was long and desperate, full of pleas, apologies, and a request to meet in person, just once. She promised there would be no drama or manipulation, just a chance to explain herself and find some peace. I felt no remorse deleting it without replying. She didn't deserve closure. She didn't deserve anything from me. However, one day I was in a cafe enjoying my new life when she found me. I still don't know if it was chance or something she had planned. It's not as if I frequented places far from where I worked. I didn't see her until she was standing next to my table, all because I was distracted by my phone. Otherwise, I might have had the chance to avoid her. At least it gave me some satisfaction to see that she didn't look well. In fact, she looked so bad that I thought, was I really going to marry someone like that? I know it's not a nice thought, but I was glad she was suffering. I tried to get up, but she insisted on talking, and she said it out loud, attracting the attention of other customers. To avoid a scene, I remained seated and asked, "What do you want?" She began with her explanations without trying to soften the conversation first. According to her, it was not true infidelity. She swore that she had no emotional connection with this man, that it only happened once, that she had never cheated on me before, that she did it because she wanted to have one last experience to explore her fantasies before committing to fidelity forever. She explained that she didn't want a traditional hen party, she just wanted this experience so that she could get married without guilt or doubts. The man was a former coworker with a reputation for being experienced. She murmured. There were rumors that he was very skilled. There were stories going around the office that he had an encounter with our boss, and she was so impressed that she gave him a promotion. Not only that, he also satisfied some of the most important female executives in the company. They're just rumors, but I was curious. I wrote to him asking if it was all true. He hinted that it was, that he was very good at what he did unofficially, that he didn't do it for money, but for pleasure. No strings attached. And that was exactly what I wanted, a purely physical experience, something momentary, nothing more. I swear I never intended to repeat it, and I had planned everything so that you wouldn't find out, so as not to hurt you. I stood there, feeling uncomfortable and disgusted. She was the one who acted inappropriately, but I was the one who felt that way. She continued talking while I disconnected mentally, wondering what kind of encounter I had sought. I interrupted her mid-sentence. "What exactly did you ask him to do?" She froze. I insisted. "Tell me in detail. Did you give him any prior instructions? Did you text him? Show me." I didn't realize I was raising my voice. She begged me to stop. "I can't say it. Please stop." She began to sob. After a moment of silence, she admitted that she had regretted it the moment I called her that day to ask how she was. That call had ruined everything, and that I should have stopped it. However, she didn't, and she carried on, and from what I heard and recorded, she didn't seem to be sorry at all. Another lie. Then came the manipulation. "If you found out, you could have come in and ended it all then. We hadn't done anything before the call yet. It wouldn't have been infidelity. But you chose revenge. You cheated on me for a week just to humiliate me in front of everyone. My parents were humiliated, traumatized. You could have handled it privately. You should have been brave and confronted me instead of running away." And then she completely changed her speech. "Even so, I can forgive you if you manage to forget what happened and we start over. We both made mistakes, but they compensate each other." I almost laughed. She really said that. That she was willing to forgive me for what I did to her. That we both made mistakes. That we should just put it behind us and maybe start again. She whispered, "I still love you. I know you love me too, so it won't be hard to fix." And then the last straw. He offered to pay me back the 40% I spent on the wedding. "I know you paid 40% up front, and that my father covered the rest. I'm going to pay him back as soon as I can. If it helps, I can pay you back your 40% too." He said it as if the money was the main problem, as if that could erase everything that had happened. But getting that money back didn't seem like a bad idea at the time, so I came up with something. I said to him, I can't promise anything, because a lot has happened between us, but paying me back for the canceled wedding could be a good start. I knew I wouldn't get that money back any other way, and it would be fair compensation after everything he had caused because of his indiscretion. We agreed that I would unblock her to coordinate the payment. She said it would take her between a week and a month, but that she would get a loan to pay me as soon as possible. I know it's not right to deceive people, but responding in the same way to someone who has betrayed you seems justified. Anyway, I didn't commit to getting back together with her if she paid me back, so technically I wasn't lying. I'll probably update in a month when I know if Jelly has made the payment or not. Update 3. I'm not going to deny that I've been a bit anxious these last 2 months because I didn't know if Jelly would finally pay or if she would discover my intentions. But she did, so this is a positive update for me. For those who think what I did is wrong and that I should have paid for the rest of the wedding too, I can put you in touch with Jelly. That way you could be so kind as to wait for her at home after being unfaithful to her and welcome her with open arms. I'm sure you'd like that kind of situation. Finally, the day came to receive my payment, which I obtained by direct transfer to my account. Not a penny was missing. Even the bank fees were covered, if there were any. I knew this because she sent me a message informing me of this herself. I asked her how she got the money. I didn't want to get involved in anything illegal, and she explained that she had taken out a loan. With that, she also managed to pay her father. "And that loan must have very high interest rates?" I commented, because surely the bank had lent her on unfavorable terms. But that was not my problem. My only concern now is deciding how I will use that money in my new life. Before continuing, I want to mention that during this time I received some messages from her trying to talk about our relationship. I responded with the minimum necessary to keep the idea of repayment alive, but without giving her false hope. My replies were deliberately ambiguous. Finally came the message she had been waiting to send, and which I knew I would eventually have to answer. I already had my reply prepared. I just needed to copy and paste it. She asked me, "What happens now?" My reply, which I still have, was, "When you said that I wasn't a man because I didn't stop what was happening, I think you were right, but only partially. A man should fight for his woman, yes, but for one who deserves it. And in your case, you decided to get involved with someone just because of their reputation. You didn't deserve it. I think you have a certain reputation now, too. I also think that a man should never go back to someone who disrespected him the way you did. So yes, I'm being a man, and it's precisely what you will never have. After sending that, I blocked her again. And yes, I know there are people who don't mind their partners being unfaithful. They might even celebrate it when they come home after being with someone else. That's why they're now worried that I should have paid my share of the wedding, even though I canceled it. I'm sorry if I hurt their feelings, but I paid to marry a loyal wife, not an unfaithful one. This is my refund for a fiancé who didn't keep her side of the bargain. And if you think that forgiving and paying was the right thing to do in this situation, you can ask her father what he did with her after I gave him his money back. He didn't forgive her either. Nobody wants to be in a relationship with someone who's been unfaithful, unless their self-esteem has completely disappeared.